Hello once again, and welcome to the United Way of Greater Waterbury podcast, The Way Forward. I'm your guest host, Glenn McCabe with United Way. Our podcast is coming to you from our post-university sponsored podcast studio right here in our offices in downtown Waterbury. This episode brought to you by United Way of Greater Waterbury, Platinum Corporate Sponsor, Ion Bank. Learn more at ionbank.com. Many of you know United Way through our vital work investing in programs and initiatives to drive impact in our three impact areas. But what gets less attention is our public advocacy work, which we want to talk about a little bit today. So I'm here in the studio once again with United Way Chief Impact Officer Jered Bruzas to discuss this further. Welcome back, Jered.
Hey Glenn, thanks for having me. Excited to be with you as kind of wrap up a pretty busy session, both on the state and us spending some time as United Way of Greater Waterbury with other United Ways nationally in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. We've been doing a lot up in Hartford, also locally here around the city. And as you mentioned, you were just down in D.C., so I was up there for 2-in-1 day up in Hartford. We also had an Alice Advocacy Day up there as well. So we're doing a lot with relationships with our elected officials and others up there in networking. So tell us a little bit about this. Why is this important? Why are we in this lane? What's our role?
Sure. Advocating for folks in our community are really vital to ensure that not only policies but funding decisions are being made in light of the needs of folks in our 10-town community. And so we take that role and responsibility very seriously, and this isn't something new to us as United Way. We've been doing quite some time. We do it in many different ways, not just at our nation's capital like we were last week, or up at the state capitol as we are regularly throughout the entire year, but also a pretty significant footprint of that with local folks, whether it's the Board of Alders or the Board of Education here in Waterbury and other surrounding towns, having conversations with legislators, bringing them out. We often bring folks out to see the work firsthand, including our annual legislative tours, which are always pretty impactful and insightful, and a great way for us to bring legislators as well as other elected officials out into the community to see firsthand what people are experiencing, often to homeless encampments and the shelters and soup kitchens and the food pantries and early care and education settings, to different schools, a number of different lanes that we are in as a United Way, focus on our three impact areas. We bring folks out regularly. So this isn't anything new to us, but we really want to make sure that we're highlighting the role of advocacy, which is really important. It's an important strategy for us as a United Way, knowing that we can't fund all these programs alone, and it's difficult to continue to fundraise for any one particular program, which we're seeing some challenges nationwide. But there's other things outside of just funding, right? Ensuring that folks in our community, like the Alice population, those that are working hard, they're asset limited, income constrained, employed, those families that are grinding day in and day out, trying to put food on their tables, doing the best they can to support their children, but yet still, Glenn, are just having a really hard time making ends meet. So we advocate for those folks too.
I think the Alice report has been a real vital tool over the last couple of years for legislators and those in elective office to use to be able to talk about the issues in the community and really have our hard data to be able to say why they're advocating for what policies and what bills that are going through. The other aspect of this, when people say advocacy, is they sometimes think it's a one-way street, that we're up there to advocate for what we need to them. But it's not only so that they'll take our phone calls, but that they know that they can call us, that we're the subject matter experts in areas. And I think the homeless tours have been great that I've been out on with you when they come out. They ask great questions, but they also know to call us when there's an issue. We just had the recent water issue in the city, and we were right on the top of the list out there working with the mayor and the municipalities to help get water out to the blind spots, our partner agencies with 24-hour clients in there that needed water. In addition to the homebound, that we actually had staff and volunteers rallied our volunteer network to get out and deliver. People don't have cars, they can't even really get out of their apartments, but we became a partner in that, as well as with the flood out in Southbury recently, a year ago, and also during COVID we really shone through that. So when we say advocacy, it's not just about getting up there saying we want. It's really a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, partnership is really vital, and I think it's really important to make sure that we understand that as a nonpartisan organization, that we truly are nonpartisan and have strong relationships across both aisles. This weekend was a great example of that. I was working alongside legislators from both sides of the aisle this morning, over the weekend, in the morning, talking about food as the legislative session was coming to a close, and they were working on the finalization of the budget. Saturday morning, legislators were texting back and forth with me on both sides of the aisle, both senators and members of the House of Representatives in Connecticut, both Democrats and Republicans, talking about issues that we're concerned about, right? And so it's having those relationships across both aisles, being nonpartisan, having those deep ties and connections. They have my cell phone, I have their cell phone. And when they have questions about what's happening and they need a bit of a pulse of what's happening on the ground in certain sectors, or whether it's on food or homelessness or housing or the Alice population, they know where to turn, and they know that we respond pretty quickly. And when they need some support when it comes to a natural disaster, whether it was the issue down in the Oxford Southbury flood area, or as you're referring to here with the water main break, having those relationships with our elected officials really does matter to ensure that we're supporting folks and supporting them in a time of need.
I mean, we had the recent incident over the winter where we opened up the warming center 24/7, which has never been done before, but there was an emergency and people called, you were able to we ended up putting up funds, $20,000, that was matched by the city and then was matched by the Housing Collective. None of us could have done that alone, but because we have the relationship and they knew that this is a worthy investment, if we're involved, it's going to get done. And so we did. It opened up the warming center 24/7 through March of last year.
Yeah. And it's a great way of showing advocacy, right? So what happened was I got a text from a provider and said, hey, we'd love to do this, and do you have any money? And I said, well, let me see what we can do. And we were able to quickly make a call to folks in city government and have those conversations. We were able to parlay that alongside another generous gift and really make sure that some of the most vulnerable in community were able to stay alive last year. And we did something similar this year too. So it's really, again, going back to advocating for sustainable resources as well as immediate need for our community. And it's a role that we play that's really important and something that's often maybe not known that we do. The things behind the scenes that we advocate for to make sure that our partner agencies and our 10 towns and municipalities support have the resources they need to thrive.
And many of the things that we are advocating for, we'll start with the statewide, Hartford level, is bringing those resources into the community. Over the long run, saves taxpayers money. I mean, the investments that we do to reduce homelessness, to the diversionary programs that we do with that, are things that it might be reentry center to reintegrate justice involved back into community, to reduce recidivism, things into, as you mentioned about Saturday, when the food programs are going to get a hit in the budget, that's going to cost the money if people don't have those resources to turn to. It's going to cause more expensive problems down the road. There's truth to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I think of the SNAP benefits, right? So when folks are receiving SNAP benefits, what are they doing with those, Glenn? They're buying groceries. And where do you buy groceries from? A grocery store. And how does a grocery store operate? It operates from staff, right? And it's those jobs that are needed and vital in our community to make sure that people are able to maintain a roof over their head and provide food for themselves and their families. So some of these investments that we're looking for support in have a real residual impact throughout the entire community to stabilize communities. It's that reinvestment. We also think about early care and education. The reality is in order for folks to be able to continue in the workplace when you have children, you need some type of early care and education foundation, a support network there for many Alice households to ensure that both parents in the house can work. And Glenn, that was also true in my house, although unfortunately because of the situations that we were in with my wife and our 4 children, for us, it didn't make sense for my wife to work. And so for a time, I had to have 2 jobs so that I can continue to support our entire family while our wife was raising our 4 little children at the time. So we recognize that had we had some of those supports as an Alice household ourselves, and if my wife would have been able to work and we did have access to that early care and education for our children, would it have made the financial strain a lot less in our family? Absolutely. And that's the reality for so many of the working families here in our 10-town area, as well as throughout the state of Connecticut. Ensuring that families that want to work, that need to work, have access to safe, affordable, quality care, early care and education is really important. And that's something that really supports the Alice population that we're deeply concerned about, Glenn.
And right now, statewide as United Ways, we're advocating for the child tax credit to be increased and go through the state on that, because that helps families like yours and others who have kids. Talking about child care, people may not realize, but United Way 211 is run by United Way of Connecticut. It's funded by the state of Connecticut and our local United Way, so part of our funds go to invest in that. And that's 24/7. People can call and you can find childcare that are licensed, that are in your community, and also supports that can help you afford that childcare as well. But through that investment, through that 211, people know where to go, get a safe place for their kids, and can get some support to help them, bridge the gap. And that's on the statewide level. Now, every year we do a Advocacy on the Hill Day in DC, and you attended this year's along with United Ways from across the country, but quite a few in Connecticut.
Yeah, it was a fantastic experience, Glenn. It was really great to be alongside so many other great folks nationwide in the United Way Worldwide Network, right, in which we are just one member of. And it was a great way for us to see firsthand what other United Ways across the network are doing to advocate for their communities and supporting Alice households and then some. And then from there, we were able to go to our nation's capital and spend some time with policymakers, lawmakers, our legislators, our elected officials, to talk to them about issues that are important to our constituents as a United Way, the programs that we support, the organizations that we support, the needs of those organizations, and obviously the needs of people in our community. And one of the needs that we see that's a growing need that you just alluded to a few moments ago is the need to support 211. Here in Connecticut, 211, as is nationwide, the platform is really the backbone. It's the gateway, the entryway for health and human services here in our communities. But unfortunately, Glenn, what we've been seeing is a really disinvestment, although we've been using 211 more and more and the calls continue to increase. And here, for example, in just the city of Waterbury, just one of our communities in our 10-town area, we're seeing over 30,000 calls a year. Glenn, that's not sustainable, and the resources that we need to continue to provide that level of support is needed now more than ever as we're seeing the call volumes increase, right, which also means, unfortunately, sometimes some of those wait times as well, and people get frustrated. So we know that people are in more of active crisis than ever before. The needs in our community continue to increase more and more. But what's not increasing, Glenn, is the sustainable resources that we need to ensure that there's always somebody on the other line. So that when we have a family here in crisis in Cheshire, or a family in Thomaston or Southbury, somebody's there to pick up that phone and answer that phone call. That somebody's there to make sure that they're walking that family through whatever situation that they're dealing with, or that elderly person that's lost all of their relatives, their family, their friends. They have nobody but that contact specialist on the other line to help make sure that they have the resources they need.
I will say where Advocacy shown is, big shout out to the state of Connecticut. They did do a bigger investment in 211 this year. We still need more to get the staffing, to get the wait times down. Many people don't realize that 211 was actually started in Connecticut. We were the first for 211, the model, and then it branched out over the country as United Way Worldwide saw the value of what we were doing here, and actually celebrating 50 years this year. So we have quite a campaign going on social media with 50 years answering the call of the difference it makes with those individuals, and then the ripple effect from each of those individuals once they get help. But the calls that they're referring to in the programs, a lot of them are programs that we fund in this community. So it's not only answering the call there at 211, but when they refer to a program in our community, it's one of our 50 programs and initiatives we invest in. And it's not only our investment, they do their own fundraising, but it's also federal and state money that we can advocate to support those areas as well. How did you find DC? Were they receptive, doors open to us to have conversations with people? Did you have access?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think people were extremely receptive. And you know what, Glenn, I was really pleasantly surprised. They knew Alice. And they knew Alice very well. And they actually rely on Alice information, Alice data here locally, very much so. And so when we were talking about Alice and we were explaining what the acronym is, oh, no, we know what Alice is. And oh, by the way, we use the Alice reports all the time in our legislative briefs.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the level of understanding from the legislators as well as their staffers that understand the role and the work of the United Way and the Alice reports.
I really think, and I've always thought since the Alice report first came out, if they put almost every decision they make up there through the Alice lens, so if we're talking about increasing this tax or not funding this program or whatever the gas prices are or the rental or whatever. Okay, how does this affect Alice? Most of our listeners know Alice, but it really is people living above the poverty level but below the minimal threshold it takes to make ends meet in Connecticut, and that number has gone up every year. It is don't have the exact number in front of me.
Yeah, it's almost 120,000, right?
For a
family of four.
That's a couple with one toddler and one infant, and that's no savings. That's no savings for college. That's no savings for the emergency car repair. That is one thing can derail them when they're already not making that budget. And part of what we do, some people are filling that. You're making $5,000 less than that threshold. You're filling that with a food pantry. You're filling that with subsidies for childcare, or you're filling you're able to work because there's an after-school program that United Way is funding and saving you funds there. And it's been a voiceless demographic that we always help but haven't been talking about as much. And the Alice report has been fantastic with that, and that the legislator on the federal and state level are both embracing that. It's taken a couple years is great, but there's a big win with advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an affordability crisis here in Connecticut, and we recognize that. And so that affordability crisis extends to those working families in our community that are Alice, that need support now than ever. The challenge, Glenn, that we're seeing is because of those programs that are out there and the criteria that they have, many families, although they can barely make ends meet or they're not making ends meet, technically make too much money to be eligible for some of these resources. Right, and so but for some of the programs that we support as a United Way of Greater Waterbury and investing in programs that will be able to help those individuals that are Alice, it's really vital because unfortunately for some folks in the community there is no lifeline, right? And so there is no public benefit that they can take advantage of because they make too much money, but yet they can barely make ends meet. They're struggling to pay their rent or their mortgage and put food on their tables and pay their bills and continue to fall behind. So how do we as a United Way continue to advocate for Alice to make sure that those folks don't fall deeper into poverty and have additional issues and catch them before it's too late?
And nobody can do it alone. The government can't do it alone. We can't. Nonprofits can't. But together with strategies that we are, it could be very dry to talk about in a podcast. But in the background, that what we're doing is really trying to elevate on multiple points. Nobody lives in a vacuum. Nobody's issues are in a vacuum. If you're struggling to make your energy bill, there's obviously other things going on. If you're missing you're choosing between food and medicine, there's probably some other dots that we can connect and be able to help and figure out what's where the opportunities are. I mean, we're all about removing obstacles to get people back on lives of self-sufficiency and being able to live their best lives. So and advocacy is such a huge part of that, and I don't think the public may not have as much awareness that we're really in that role. So anything else we're missing here?
No, I just think that it's a really great opportunity for us to highlight the work of advocacy in the community. It does happen here locally on the city or town side of things as we work with our 10-town area, as well as the state and on the federal level. And we're fortunate to be able to be a voice for Alice families, and we will continue to do what we can to advocate for sustainable resources and help craft and create policy or an understanding of the needs of our community so that Alice households and below shouldn't have to struggle as much in our community.
And I think the people in elective office, they're our partners, and we're their partners, and we want to continue that relationship. And we do invite anybody who might be listening who is in office to come out on one of our legislative tours for one of our impact areas. The basic needs tour is great, financial stability, and the education tours, and meet the people on the front lines and really hear what's going on. So with that being said, we'll close off saying, when we know more, we can do more, and this does include our friends who hold public office on both sides of the aisle. Thank you once again to our Platinum corporate sponsor, Ion Bank, for making today's episode possible, and thank you for taking the time to listen and for your support. We'll see you next time on The Way Forward.